So, hey, Tori.
What's up, Ben?
Why is proper planning and preparations for a project of any kind important?
Well, there's a lot. I don't know. I think it shows your passion for the project.
Right.
Because you spend a lot of time, preparing all of your resources and knowing what you want to do for the duration, but it also eliminates unnecessary backtracking and mistakes and that kind of thing. I think that it's important just in general.
You think it's important just in general?
Yeah.
So when you're drawing something, how many steps or what kind of steps do you take in order to plan before you begin? Before you put pencil to paper, what do you do?
Well, I found that drawing is kind of like a performance in that you have to practice your instrument or practice your scales or whatever before you perform for that final piece. And so part of practicing...
Like tuning an instrument.
Exactly, like tuning an instrument. It's different than just general practice. But so for a specific piece, it's important to, sketch it out. Different ways, several different ways to get, what you want. And then once you find out what you want, it's important to sketch it again. So you know where everything goes, and it's like your dress rehearsal, right?
Right.
So that everything is in its place, and so that when you get down to the final piece, there's less creative heavy lifting on your part, so that the spontaneity that does come through, I think, is more genuine than if you're trying to force it all the time. For this piece, I didn't do any planning because I ran out of time, and I was like...
You just kind of, you decided you'd wing it?
Yeah, I did, and it's really bad. And that's not to be, self-deprecating, because
there's a
difference between, hey, I didn't do as well as I could have this time, and I'm a crappy artist.
Right. It's important to, don't give credence to the latter.
Right.
And rely on the former. Rely on your own taste. If something's not right, bring that to your own attention.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and make excuses saying, oh, well, everything I touch is golden.
Right.
But on the opposite scale as well, don't sit there and don't think everything you touch is garbage either.
Yeah.
It's an important part of the learning process. I know when I make videos, if I didn't prepare, if I didn't have an idea, if I didn't have some kind of outline for what I was going to do and schedule it, I would never get anything done.
Right.
If I were to say that I'm just going to wing a video, and I didn't plan out, when I'm going to be finished playing the game, when I'm going to be finished writing the script, when I'm going to record all my lines, if I didn't have those things planned out, and say, by day 3 I'll have the game played, by day 6 rather, I'll have the script written, etc.
Right.
I would, be Friday before the video was supposed to be due, and I would have nothing.
Yeah.
I'd have played the game, but I forgot to record footage.
In this case, for this piece that I did, the lack of planning shows in just the kind of haphazard way things are kind of put on the page. I was obviously, it's no secret, I was copying the original Castlevania cover, not to sell it as my own or not in that vein, but to kind of redraw it in my own way.
Style?
Yeah. And I didn't. And then I didn't do any sketches prior to. I was like, oh, this is due at the end of this week. Due, we're in school. This is supposed to be done by the end of this week, so I'm just going to sit. It's already pre-planned, right? I'm just, there's an original.
You're looking at
here.
the box. You can just, copy it.
And I realized as I was going, this is not working. This isn't going as planned at all. And then it got to the point where I didn't have time to go back and replan.
Right.
I had, it was a deadline. And so that's another important thing. You plan first so that you don't mess up and then realize you have to plan, and then you're out of time and you're on deadlines, and then your work suffers.
Right.
In general. Anyway, so planning takes a lot of the work out of it.
Exactly.
I feel it's working smarter, not harder.
Some would argue that, why bother planning? Isn't art supposed to be subjective and a personal expression? And what about the idea that creativity should be spontaneous? How do you feel about that?
I think that's crap.
Hold on now. I think that
Hold
art...
on, let me finish.
All right.
Let me finish. I went to school and paid a lot of money for a long time to break down what that statement is and what it means.
Right.
The concept of spontaneity and inspiration in art,
Yeah.
right? And it's not that it's not real, but it's not efficient and it's not helpful. So if you're gonna do art for a more practical reason than just for yourself, there has to be some kind of research and learning and planning involved, because if you're just gonna do it when you want to,
Right.
when you pass the perfect cup of coffee at Starbucks and now you want to draw it, you would never get anything done, and you can't, not that art exists only to profit from it, but if you've made that decision and that's what you're doing is to draw or go to school for art and design so that you can sell it and provide for your family off of it, there has to be some kind of process you follow so that when you're not feeling creative and spontaneous and inspired, you
Right.
can still do what you have to do.
Kind of have to build that habit.
Exactly. It's definitely a habit. It's very much also like a muscle.
Right.
And you go work out.
You exercise it.
You exercise.
Right.
You have to exercise like every day almost in order for your muscles to not be good anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I am sad when artists are like, well, I just don't feel inspired. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an excuse. Like, not that that's not a real thing, but there's got to be a certain point when you're like,
Right.
all right,
You got to be able to say,
I have to plan this so that
Yes.
I do it. And you have to get over that.
yes.
So,
Sometimes art isn't pretty and flowy
Yeah.
and expressive and spontaneous. Sometimes art is pencil and paper and numbers and
for hours,
spreadsheets
until you get it
the boring
right.
adult things.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that planning, but if you have a plan, then those moments of inspiration, spontaneity can shine through.
Right.
Because you have a foundation that you're working on already.
Right.
So if you do all these, for example, if you do all these sketches and you get to your final piece and you're like, oh, this would look so much better this way, then you already have the framework for the rest of the picture
Right.
that you can rely on and change what you need to. So I think that planning just makes your life easier.
I agree.
Even if it sounds boring
No, I agree.
at first.
So I think a good example of the contrast between spontaneous art, I'm just going to wing it, and planned art, I'm exercising a muscle, is the difference between your Castlevania piece and the drawings you've been making for Inktober this month.
Well, I guess there's not a whole lot of planning involved for Inktober either, but they're mostly like sketches.
Right.
And so there's like a sliding scale,
Okay.
right, of sketch to finished piece. But I do spend a lot more time on them. Like, the Castlevania piece took me a while, but I suffered the whole time.
Right, right.
And I was just doing it to finish it. Which I think that's important. Like, that's where, because I'd lost interest didn't mean I stopped.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean? Like,
You still followed through.
I had to keep going
Right.
and follow through.
If you just abandon everything, and I'm a huge example of this. If you just abandon something because you either lose interest or you don't feel it's good,
we would never get anything.
or you don't have an audience, we'd never get anything done. There are so many mistakes and things in the Castlevania video, in the video game cookbook episode that we did, that looking back, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I should have done this. You know, the text wasn't so great. The graphics on screen weren't that great. Maybe I shouldn't use a giant, Facebook like button instead of something more funny, something more clever. Maybe I just shouldn't have had it at all. And I look back at that and I see that, but if I didn't upload that, I wouldn't know that I can improve on that. I can look back now and say, hey, let's make this better. Hey, let's make our next one better. And our audience, can look at what I've done. And if they want to do something similar, if we've inspired them to want to do something, they can look at what I've done and say, you know what, I want to do this better. And it saves them the hours of mistakes or the hours of pain that they might go through learning it all from scratch yet again. Because everything we know is by standing on the shoulders of giants.
Certainly.
There's nothing new under the sun. All knowledge is learned from somebody else. We've got it from some book that somebody wrote, and they got it from somebody else. But it's important to take that and then make it your own and use that to plan out what you want to do.
Yeah. But I think getting frustrated, losing interest,
Yes.
I think, well, for one, is from a lack of planning.
Yep,
but also,
absolutely.
even if you have all the planning and you still lose interest, it's important to sort of push through and get to the other side so that if nothing else, you can say you did it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If it's not good or quite finished all the way or perfect, at least you did it.
You can add it to your portfolio.
Right. This Castlevania piece, for example, no, I wouldn't necessarily add it to my portfolio, but at least I can say I finished it.
Right,
For the
exactly.
most part. And then I spilled ink on it. So
Yeah, how did that happen?
I used a lot of wet ink in my Inktober piece, and I was working on them at the same time. Like, while one was drying, I'd work on the other one. And I literally just dripped ink. No, I put water on the paper first, and I dripped ink into the water. So it was very wet and drippy. And I held it up to take a picture of it for, to post. And I didn't realize, but it, like, dripped down onto my conservation piece. And I found out later when I went in to get something. I was like, oh no. But at the same time, I was like, oh good. I don't have to do anything else to it. It's ruined, so it's fine. So I would call this first one a bust, but due to my lack of planning, not necessarily.
Due to your lack of planning, right?
Yeah, not necessarily because I'm a bad artist or any of those things, just because I didn't plan well enough. And then I dropped ink on it, which I guess is also part of
you didn't plan
poor planning. Didn't plan my Inktober properly. Right. So, but no, for the next one, I know how to plan. Right. And I have a better idea of how to go forward.
Right.
And fix the next one.
Yes. Which is good.
Yeah.
So let us know down in the comment section below if you've had experience with planning and prep, if you think that it's important, if you just prefer the spontaneity of art itself.
Tell us why that works for you. Like, tell us, like, if you have a different process, tell us about it and tell us why it works for you, because it's, I don't know, I like hearing about how people do things differently.
If you don't have a process, tell us why.
Yeah, and if you have an example of when not planning, like, ruined everything, or if you have an example when planning and it was still bad. Like, if you planned it and it was still bad.
You let us know.
Like, let us know. We love hearing about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And like I said, it'll help us all get better, you know? We can learn from each other. Mm-hmm. It's not just my wife and I sitting here, you know, who can teach anybody else. It's, you know, we learn from everybody else every day. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine us trying to teach anybody else, honestly. If you can learn anything from us, then, wow, you are more impressive than us trying to teach something. And I applaud you. But, yeah, let us know. Tell us your experiences. Let's join our conversation.
Let's have a conversation about this. You know, whatever they say on social media these days.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. We will see you around. I'm Ben Jones.
I'm Tori Jones.
And this has been
Food for Thought.